Hello, you're very welcome along to the Matchbook Horse Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, standing in for the always traveling Tom Stanley and ever unreliable white voice Tom Stanley. So delighted to welcome it's pretty, A-team box office sort of field this week. We've got Donn McClean and Matt Toombs after their huge couple of prize winners on Cheltenham November Sunday. And of course, as always, we've Steve Jones, who was in the Guinness Village that weekend. Steve, is that correct?
Yeah, well, I did bump into you, and as everyone knows, you didn't buy me a drink, but I won't hold that against you.
No, listen, it was just circumstances went against us, and after the abuse I received last week, it's great that I can finally have my voice on camera, which for once. Donn, you were on fire at Cheltenham November Sunday. I have to say I did miss them all. I was not engaged fully in terms of the racing that Sunday, but to see you, I was a bit disappointed. You almost put up all those winners, but fair play.
Yeah, it's disappointing. Look, it was just one of those weekends, Daniel, things kind of clicked. So we have lots and lots and lots of weekends where they don't, but no, it just happened the right way that weekend for a change, yeah.
Yeah, and we do. And Matt, delighted to welcome you on. It's National Hunt season. I was just telling you quickly off air that I should be fully engaged with World Cup yet. Every time I get a minute, I'm on the Cheltenham anti-post markets already.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are some better markets this year. Some of the recent 2 or 3 years, we've had a slew of really short price ones in the novice races. Some of them look like they've got some value at the moment. So definitely worthwhile spending a bit of time trying to dig that out.
Exactly. You always feel like you can get the angle. If you are watching on YouTube, do hit that thumbs up. Get involved if you're watching on the live stream. And if you're watching back, do comment your best bets. And if you're listening on the podcast, timestamps will be available in the description for each and every race. We'll get to the first race, which is the featured race on Saturday. And lo and behold, we have Constitution Hill declared for the moment. And please God, he'll make it to the track. It's the 210 at Newcastle. We'll take a look at the betting. Currently, it's early prices here. So the current betting is Constitution Hill is available at 1.27, the biggest price out there. Epatante 5.02. Then the rest of the field, Not So Sleepy 17.4. Tommy's Oscar 19.6, and Boy de Rev also in there at 17.7. But those prices will probably get a lot bigger on the last couple anyway. Donn, we'll go to you, and maybe a little bit on last week's disappointing, horses being pulled out last minute due to the ground. Where do you stand on this? It's definitely a tough subject to approach, but everyone's got an opinion on social media anyway. I'd be interested to hear.
Yeah. No, it seems to as opinion much, isn't it? A lot of things actually. Look, I suppose of course it was disappointing. Constitution came out, Lampress came out, Edwardson came out, but I have to say I do feel for Nicky Henderson, because it's not that he doesn't want to run his horse, and because his horse is so profile, everybody's very interested, and anytime he says anything about him, it's all taken as in it's noticed and it's regarded. Of course it is. He's a seriously high-profile horse. He's a fit for the champion hurdle. So, I'm sure he wanted to run. He's just erring on the side of caution, not allowing him to take his chance. We've got good to soft ground. I see they're saying it's going to be genuine national hunt ground at Newcastle on Saturday. So, all going well. And look, it's good that he's allowing the two of them to take a chance. To me, that's key, because he could have gone, no, leave him off. Could have gone to the Jerry Fielding actually at Newmark or at Newbury on Saturday. Could have gone to the international hurdle, but that would have skewed the timetable for the horse in terms of his stepping stones through the season. So, look, nobody's happy when he doesn't run. We were all dying to see him run, and you have to feel for people who were at Ascot, who went to Ascot to see him run, as well as Edwardson and Lampress. It was a really disappointing weekend around, and I know that people are talking about long-term implications and ground situations and watering and leaving the Ascot track brand during the summer, and having marquees on them during Royal Ascot, so maybe that's something that people have to look at long term. It's the same issue at Leopardstown here, and trainers here as well that took horses out at Navan there 2 Sundays ago when the ground was just again deemed to be not soft enough to let them take the chance. So look, it happens. It's happening in racing. The climate's changing. I think we need to change mindsets maybe watering policies as a result. It was disappointing for everybody. I wouldn't blame Nicky Henderson anyway for taking him out if that's what he thought was the right thing to do for the horse.
Yeah, Matt, I heard Shark Hannon speak very well on Luck on Sunday, and it's a brilliant 20-minute clip on YouTube for anyone that hasn't watched it. But Shark mentioned, he was asked about those withdrawals, and he said a lot of the top horses nowadays are big horses, and that reason they're putting a lot of pressure on their limbs, and I guess with the ground that kind of makes an impact. For example, he gave the example Hewitt's actually a small horse, so for him he'd have no problem running on good ground as well. So I think is that perhaps the crux of the issue as well. The horses everyone's buying a staying chaser. Therefore, horses by default are naturally probably bigger than maybe they used to be.
Well, that's definitely a factor. And 20 years ago, so many of the horses had come off the flat. They were used to running on quicker ground. So definitely that's part of it. The one thing I would add into this debate is that for a long time, I've been arguing that official going descriptions should be given by a team of independent experts. We've got yielding in Ireland, but over here we've got good to soft and heavy, basically, for jumps racing. So it's very generic, and it would help if you had independent experts who'd be seeing and comparing the going at dozens of courses. You get more confidence that there are going to be accurate going descriptions. At the moment, it just feels like we're a bit in the dark ages. Clerks are put in an invidious position. So it's one of the many areas we could drag the sport into the modern age if we've got a team of experts doing this. And for the big meetings, giving their view on the ground midweek as well, so people knew what they were going to get.
Yeah, Steve, I'm quickly bring you in before I maybe go to Matt, who has a little bit of an angle in this race. What's your sort of take on the late withdrawals?
Yeah, you've got to trust the trainers to train, to be honest. We can all spot when horses have been given a bad ride. We don't have to have ridden in races to spot that. And people who say, oh, how many winners have you ridden, miss the point. But you can say it when how many horses have you trained, because the vast majority of people wouldn't have the first clue about what goes into training. I took someone up to Fergal O'Brien's one morning and we watched the horses come up the gallops and everything, went for a cup of tea. And he said to me, yeah, when do they do the training? And I said, that's it, basically. So you have got to trust the trainers to train. And it's unfortunate what happened last weekend. You point the finger at Nicky Henderson like everyone wanted to last weekend. But you've got to point it at Alan King, Venetia Williams and every other trainer who took horses out because of the ground. So we've had such a hot summer. I was as deflated as anybody by Ascot last weekend. I thought it was awful and a great missed opportunity. About the first time for probably about 80 years when there wasn't a football match of note on Saturday, and it was racing's opportunity. And yet again, it didn't happen in racing's favour. And the Gold Cup winner, coincidentally, got beaten, stuffed it Haydock. So we didn't even have that to fall back on. And it was just a very, very disappointing day. But you can blame the trainers all you like. The National Hunt programme is the problem, and it needs addressing. And we don't need any more reviews. We don't need any more consultations. We need someone to act, and they just don't. And there was on a Monday, there was great prize money at Ludlow, Kempton, Musselburgh, proper tracks, proper ground, 6 runners, 5 runners, 4 runners, 3 runners. It's pathetic, but racing is just drifting into oblivion. But blame the trainers. It's easy target.
Yeah. And so on this, and going to the fighting fifth, I know, Steve, you're a no bet. Donn, you like Constitution Hill, but it's a no bet given the price. In terms of looking for an angle, Matt, you might find one in the without market. So these markets are highly competitively priced on Matchbook, usually on Saturday morning. So take it away. What sort of price would you be looking for on Tommy's Oscar?
Well, one firm has priced up. He's about 8.5, which I think is fair enough. I wouldn't want to take on Constitution Hill. The vibes have been off the scale. Nicky's been implying that he's in a different league to the other hurdlers he's had. This is a man's trained 5 different horses to win the champion hurdle. He seems to consider Constitution Hill his hurdling equivalent to Sprinter Sacra. So he's not a betting proposition, obviously, but I've got a trend, and this is more relevant in the context of Epitome. Nicky's won 6 of the 18 Grade 1 renewals, if you count the dead heat last year, including 4 of the last 5, from just 11 runners, which sounds like a fantastic record. But 8 of his 11 runners went off odds on. So despite having 6 winning bets, you'd actually have lost 12% of your betting bank. And the reason is that Nicky's horses tend to be the class act here, but are often undercooked. And the way I apply this is to look and see whether the opposition are likely to be good enough to take advantage of a likely lack of hard fitness of the 7 Barrows runner, or whether Nicky's horses just outclass them. I think Constitution Hill is going to outclass them, but Epitome may be worth taking on at long odds on in the without market. As I think the consensus will be that she'll be ridden to finish second, and so everyone will want to back her and she'll be too short. I mean, she dead heated with Not So Sleeping this last year before thrashing him by 12 lengths in the Christmas hurdle. She's miles below her best at Newcastle. She's in her 6th season in training. I'm always nervous of assuming that horses, especially mares, are going to return in the same form at this stage. And Tommy's Oscar's one of those horses punters don't seem to take to. He won the Champion Hurdle Trial at Haydock. Occasion got to him at Cheltenham, so I'd ignore that. He took a fierce hold. But he won off 155 on his chasing debut against a really solid yardstick. Time may show his 6 lengths second to Banbridge is a good effort. I'm not sure he finds it as easy to jump fences as hurdles, early days over the big obstacles, but he's fit and brings a solid level of form to this. And with Not So Sleepy and Constitutional in the field, there ought to be a strong gallop on, which is important for him. And it'll also test Epatante's fitness. So at about 8.5, it'll be a no-bet race for me. But for those who do want to have a bet, that's the way I play it.
Okay, we've spent enough time there talking not necessarily about the race, but the overall picture in the national hunt scene regarding Constitution Hill's withdrawal last week. Let's hope fingers crossed, we get that match between Epatante and Constitution Hill, and maybe cheer without play, as Matt has touched on. We'll move on to the first race we're going to cover in terms of race card order from Newbury. We'll take a look at the betting. This is the 120 at Newbury, and your current favourite at 5.5 is Cap Course. Killer Kane is 6.0. Mr. Coffee 8.5. The Machine is also 8.5. Dublin 4 10.0, and Captain Ord 11.0, 11.0, and bigger the rest as well. Likes of Kitty's Light in this field, Zanza as well. Don, we'll go to you for this one. Kind of set this race up for us. It's a decently competitively priced handicap, 5.5 the field.
Yeah, no, it's a nice race, this, the Sir Peter O'Sullivan Memorial Handicap Chase, and JP McManus always runs his horses in the Sir Peter O'Sullivan colours, and he's won the Cap colour a couple of years ago. As You Like finished third in it there a few years ago. He had Canal was only just beaten by Captain Nord there the year before last, and then Cap Course came and won it last year in the Sir Peter O'Sullivan colours. So it's a race that JP McManus targets. Cap Course is favourite again, and he's only £6 higher than he was when he won it last year. So you can understand why he's favourite. I'm sure Paul Nicholls has targeted him at the race again. But no, I like Dublin 4. He goes well at Newbury, and he's unusual. And he's a hold-up horse, but he does seem to like it at Newbury. He's won there twice. And I thought his run the last comeback was really good when he was held up well at the back, and he made ground up the home straight. He came under a ride from about the third last and just stayed on. Look, it never looked like he was going to get into overdrive, but he stayed on the far side to finish second. So I think that's probably, like, I wouldn't be at all surprised if they were having him getting ready for this race, given that he does go well at Newbury. I think the slight step up in trip from nearly 2.5 miles the last time to 2 miles 6.5 furlongs, that should suit him. He stays 3 miles. He's got a win on the board over this course and distance as well. Fergal O'Brien's horses are in good form. And yeah, I think I thought he would be a wee bit shorter than 10.0 or 10.5. Yeah, I think he's overpriced at that.
Yeah, 10.0 is the current offer there. Steve, you like Mr. Coffee?
No, I don't.
No, I don't.
Not guilty. Not guilty.
Carry on. Who's your selection? That's Matt's selection. Go on.
I went round in circles with this race a bit, to be honest. The one I came down on is the horse making his return after a seasonal break. Is Java Point, who was quite a progressive novice last season, won 3 of his last 4. The only defeat he suffered in those 4 races was in the time form novices chase at Cheltenham in January, which is always a good race, and it was won by Imperial Alcazar this time, and thought that was still a decent enough effort from a horse that's probably got a bit more to offer. Won't mind the ground as it is, has won on all sorts of ground, so just might just have a little bit more improvement in, and enough to make Java Point progress competitive at an all right price.
Yeah, Matt, you're the one guilty of putting up Mr. Coffee here.
Yeah, I hope it won't be too guilty. Yeah, he was smashed in the post-declaration betting for the Kim Muir of 137. He was in from 17.0 to 6.0. He looked a bit of a lummox up until that point. I remember him landing on the top of the open ditch in front of the stands at Sandown, the Scilly Isles, demolishing it. And to my surprise, he ran an excellent race in the Kim Muir, beaten a couple of lengths, spied a mistake at the last. He was badly hampered at the second. He had every excuse not to fancy it in his first big field handicap. Took it all in his stride. And whilst Sam Whaley-Coe was a really good amateur, Mr. Coffee looks like the type who would be better off in a race with professional riders. Doesn't look straightforward, doesn't look always to be concentrating. So having a jockey like James Bonar, I wrote on board, ought to be a real plus. There's some important context to his run here. He's rated 140. He's aimed for the Grand National, and the cut in the last 6 Nationals has fallen between 142 and 145. So he needs to get up the handicap to get a run. He's won on 3 of his 4 seasonal reappearances. So I think Nicky will want to get a win into him at this stage, get him sufficiently high in the handicap, then let him down afterwards and plan his national prep from there, rather than bringing him along steadily throughout the season and risk having to peak him after the turn of the year to make the cut. It's a very competitive race, but I think he's good value here at about 8.5.
Okay, Mr. Coffey for Matt, Java point for Steve, and Dublin 4 for Donn. We'll move on to the 135 at Newcastle. It's a novices limited handicap chase, and the betting as we currently have it on matchway.com, you can back Shantu Lucky at 3.75, Malinello at 4.0, Son of the Psalm at 5.0, Lord Rocco at 5.0, and big difference is 8.0. And interesting enough, despite 5 runners in the field, Donn and Matt are sitting this one out. So it's over to you, Steve. Anyone listening to the podcast, this is the one tip you'll get on this race. Steve, tell us why you have the winner.
I was surprised it was you had to go through 4 of the 5 runners before you got to Lord Rocco, because I thought he was quite obvious, to be honest. What was at the top of the market? Shantu Lucky. I mean, I'm not convinced by him at all. I think he's typical. He's coming over from Ireland, from Gavin Cromwell's, and I dare say he's the typical Irish horses coming over, not because he's after some low-hanging fruit. He probably isn't all that competitive in Ireland. And Lord Rocco has only had 1 run over fences. That was at Ayr a few weeks ago, and he ran really well, over 2.5. Now, this horse has got a lot of stamina. Up to just shy of 3 miles would be ideal for him. He won over hurdles at Newcastle last season, and James Hewitt, who trains him, is a good trainer who's got his horses in really good form. They're all running well, or most of them, and he's a trainer that adopts the patient approach and can progress horses, trains the right way. So Lord Rocco, I think, has got a real good chance of dominating that race.
Yeah, Lord Rocco at 5.0 currently. And we'll move on to the next game, is Newbury 155. We'll pick the prices as we go here based on selection. So over to you, Matt. Take it away. You have a win and place shout.
Yes, the horse I fancy in this is Peking Rose, Fergal O'Brien's. He shapes as if he has plenty of improvement in him. He was just chinned in the Grade 2 bumper at Aintree a couple of seasons ago, splitting Nappers Hill and Stage Star. Really green there. Very much a work in progress during his first season over hurdles. Bumped into smart novices when second to Lacta Constance and Gelino Bello. He was well fancied on his handicap debut at Aintree, over 2.5 in the Grade 3 won by Langerdan. Ran a fair race there. And given he looked far from the finished article, I was hoping he'd learn a lot from it. Had a wind up over the summer, returned to Aintree and won what looked at the time a strong Class 2 handicap of 129 last month. A different kind in the Great Wood and one more for the road at Ascot last week. Didn't advertise the form, but they were both heavily backed to do so. Might have had excuses. Different kind looks at something might have gone amiss. Neil King's horses aren't firing that well, so maybe that was the reason for one for the road's finishing effort. And Peking Rose is only up £3 for that win here, and in the presence of horses with big reputations. Nicky's Walking on Air, Dan's Westbow Bourbon, both very well touted. So hopefully they'll make the market. They are likely to shorten based on reputation between now and the off. So waiting until the day to back Peking Rose might be the right strategy, as he may drift. As he's often at this sort of price, I'd only be backing win only. But I think he'll run his race here, where the other two are more bolt up or bomb out merchants. So for me, he's a play in both the win and the place market.
Okay, you mentioned the top two in the market. West Balboa is 4.72, Walking on Air at 4.0. Donn, you like the fourth in the market?
Yeah, Lord Badsley. I just he ran in that Betfair hurdle. I really like that race. It's working out really well, as we discussed a couple of weeks ago. Like, I like to move up to second in that race. He's one of the great with Dorian Fortune, who won it. He finished 5th in the champion hurdle. First Street, who was 3rd in it, who will come on to as well, finished 2nd in the county hurdle. So that it's a strong race, and Lord Badsley was only beaten just over 3 lengths in the end by Dorian Fortune. So it was a big run by him. I thought his run as well in the silver trophy, the Chef's first of the season, was a really good run. He finished 2nd behind Nappers Hill, who went on and won the elite hurdle next time. And Nappers Hill is just a really progressive horse. And Lord Badsley had to kind of challenge. He had to make his ground from the rear. It was a race in which the pace held up well. He challenged towards the far side, which wasn't ideal. Nappers Hill came up the near rail. Harry Cobden made a beeline for the near rail, and that's where he finished off his race. So I thought Lord Badsley did well to finish second behind Nappers Hill, who's gone and enhanced the form since. And then last time he was really impressive in beating Royal Munee at Plumpton. He's got a £9 hike for that, which is not ideal. He's up to 133. But I just think he's a progressive horse. He goes well at Newbury as well. And Chris Gordon, his trainer, he's had 6 winners from his last 19 runners. It's a strike rate of 32%. His horses are in really good form. So I think Lord Badsley, I think he should be closer to the top of the market than he is.
Yeah, Steve, you like one at a price here, current mood, 15.0. It's taken 20 minutes and 44 seconds, and Steve has used the mute button. Whoever had under 25.5, you have been paid out, Steve.
Right.
Yeah, you have been paid out. Hopefully, we'll be paid out on current mood as well, because she's got a good chance. I think she ran a really pleasing race first time out at 4 Slats, which I think she needed big time, and I think that's going to set her up lovely for this race. She's trained by Evan Williams and ridden by his daughter Isabel, and she won on this horse at Chepstow back in February. That was a novice hurdle. And she'd already run in some good races behind the likes of Blazing Carl at Cheltenham in Grade 2s. And she was only, I think, 4th favourite for the Imperial Cup. That didn't go to plan. Probably it was all a little bit too much at that stage. But I think this horse is definitely well handicapped. And I think she's quite happy leading, which... I didn't see a huge amount of pace in this race, so I think she might be in the right position. And although she's got to probably put in a bit of a personal best, I think she's more than capable of running really well in this race. She's double figures, so winning place, current mood. I really like her chances, especially some of the others. They would like to see a faster pace and pull a few of these fancied horses can pull a bit hard. So current mood up the front somewhere, and hopefully that'll be ideal.
Yeah, as you mentioned, 15.0 currently. Peak and Rose for Matt and Lord Badsley for Donn. We'll move on to the 2:30 at Newbury. This is an intermediate handicap hurdle, and we'll take a look at the betting as we have it currently on the Match with Betting Exchange. You have a PCAR at 4.33. First Street, same price, 4.33. Teddy Blue, 5.5. Theatre Glory, 5.5. And it's 13.0 and bigger the rest. Donn, we'll throw this back to you. You like First Street here?
Yeah, if Nicky Henderson had put Constitution Hill in here, you could have put him in to keep the weights down for First Street. He didn't.
That's true, yeah.
So First Street has to carry top weight as a result. But I think he could be up to it. Look, we're back to the Betfair hurdle form from last year. He finished second in the county hurdle. He wasn't beaten far in the Betfair hurdle. He was well beaten at Aintree on his last run, but that was in the top novices hurdle, a Grade 1 race behind John Bond and Fabiolo. I mean, ideally, you would have liked him to finish a wee bit closer to those two than he did, but I mean, like they could be serious horses this year. John Bond, I think, is 2-1 or thereabouts for the Arkle, and El Fabiolo went and won at Punchestown after that. So, and he could be a really exciting horse as well for Willie Mullins and Simon Munir and Isaac Swade this year. So, First Street, you can allow him that. And back here, freshened up. He goes well fresh. He won a handicap hurdle at Kempton on his first run last season. He finished second in a bumper on his first run the previous season. So I just think he's a really likeable horse. He's only 5. He's got plenty of potential to improve again. He does have to give away to all his rivals, but Jerry Field and hurdle, like it's a good race. It's an intermediate hurdle for horses who can go on to better things. And I think First Street could be better than his handicap rating of 146. So look, he's favourite, but he's what, 3.75 or 4.0 favourite. So yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, top of the market. Also, Steve, you like the alternative?
Yeah, I do. And another horse that I think certainly you can make a case for being well handicapped is Picar of Dan Skelton's, who on debut last October was only beaten a length by Nappers Hill. Well, when you consider that Nappers Hill is winning graded races these days, I thought that was a really good starting point. Then ran in a 3-runner race at Cheltenham behind I Like to Move It, then ran in a Grade 2 at Haydock behind John Bond. So was taking on really, really top horses, and then on return broke his duck at Chepstow by beating Hullenbach, who that wouldn't have been the worst race in the world by any means. And Hullenbach had finished place in the entry bumper at the Grand National meeting. So that was another good performance. And it gets in here in a really tasty handicap, Mark. I think the handicap has made a mistake with this horse. And I want to take advantage of that.
Yeah, Matt, you're in agreement on Skelton's horse here.
Absolutely, I'd echo everything Steve said. That race at Chepstow's, Steve commented, a warm race. Mr. Chewy, who was third, looked in command at a good introductory at Ascot last week when falling time for a tune, though he got chinned today, but won by a wide margin at Exeter. When you're looking at these top handicaps, one question I always ask myself is this a handicap for handicappers? Or is it a race that's often a stepping stone for horses on their way to graded conditions races? Obviously, you look at each renewal individually, but this has been a stepping stone to graded conditions races. So as Don said, might be that for First Street off top weight. Epatante Rock on Ruby have won the champion hurdle after taking this in recent years. And so one stat that illustrates that is that only 4 winners this century had already won a handicap hurdle. This hasn't been a race that has been for genuine handicappers, as it were. So that's why I like Picard. 127, as Steve says, just looks the wrong mark. Time for a tune who was 21 lengths behind him is off 130 now. Now, horses can improve very quickly at this time, but even so, this looks the wrong mark. 7 winners this century won their handicap debut. He's been running in good races, so they've got good experience. There are only 8 runners here, so it's not as if it's a massive field handicap where a lack of handicap experience brought in. I think he's a good bet.
Okay, yeah, some big good plays there. So it's Matt and Steve versus Don there. We'll see who's right come Saturday afternoon, and we move on to what probably is the best betting race for sure, and a lot of old favourites in this race. It's a 305 at Newbury, the Carl Gold Cup as it's now called. And we'll take a look at the betting as we have it on matchbook.com, and it's a very competitive heat here. Car Rambler 8.0 currently, the ultimate winner. The 300 through 5 8.0. Remasters is 8.5, and well, there's various horses there. Bustleton's in there 9.5, Oscar Elite 10.0, Fiddler on the Roof 11.0 as well. So there's a lot of horses in there. Matt, we'll go to you. When an Irish horse is tipped up here, it's been tipped up by both yourself and Steve and not Don. The alarm bells are ringing here. I'm a big fan of Bustleton, but why isn't Don tipping it, Matt? Tell me why.
We'll find out in a minute. This has kind of become the opposite. I was talking about handicaps that are stepping stones to graded conditions races. This used to be that. And of the first 17 renewals this century, 13 winners had either making a handicap debut or just one handicap start. The last 5 winners have run in 13, 9, 5, 6 and 3 handicap chases respectively. This is more of a standard Premier handicap now, whereas it used to be the second biggest handicap chase of the season after the National and a stepping stone to Grade 1s. Bustleton's been left on his Irish mark of 149. The average rise at the Festival for Irish Handicap Chasers was £4. His target was the National, but bizarrely, although a novice like Noble Yates is eligible, a battle-hardened handicapper like Bustleton isn't, because he'll only be 6 in April. So I suspect this has now become his big target of the season. And ground conditions will be important here. You often get good ground for this race. The chase track dries out quickly in normal times. 5 of the last 12 renewals were run in under standard time, 3 of which were unofficially good to soft ground. So unless there's overwatering going on, following all the controversy of the last couple of weeks, you're going to need a horse that acts on genuinely good ground, and Bustleton fits that bill perfectly. Looking forwards to the festival, as the nature of this race has changed, shows its influence on the festival. Fairly recently, it was still a Gold Cup trial. Denman and Bobsworth did the double. Lord Windermere bombed out here. And until 2015, this race hadn't produced a winner of either the Ultima or Kim Muir for 25 years. But the trend is that at the last 8 festivals, runners from this are 4 from 19 in the Ultima, 103% profit, 1 from 6 in the Kim Muir. And it's usually a handicap for top handicappers now. So after you watch this, it's worth compiling a list of runners you think may be suited by the Ultima or Kim Muir. Those 5 winners all went off 11.0 or shorter at the festival. So the value can often be non-runner, no bet in the run-up to the meeting for punters who've done their prep.
Okay, and Steve, you're in agreement with Bustleton, and also an old favourite of mine, Oscar Elite. 3rd in the Ultima last year, 2nd in the Albert Bartlett the year before.
Yeah, I want to split stakes on this because I just think that there's plenty of horses that you can rule out, and I like the angle in with Bustleton. I was impressed with him. And there's a lot of substance to that form in the Kerry National. given that Hewick was upsides him at the last when he departed. And Hewick might have gone on in one, but this is a tough horse and he's very unexposed at this sort of distance. He's not bred really to want to go up in distance, but I think this horse is tough and he stays, and he responded really well to blinkers last time. And like Matt said, he jumps really well and he goes on good ground. So I think, given the fact that Irish horses come over here and win our races for fun, I wanted to have him on side. And Oscar Elite was the other one. So he was third in the Ultima, behind Coric Rambler, behind Jericho Rock, and in front of Our Power, who I'm not convinced is going to see out the slightly extra distance. But Oscar Elite was raced very wide that day, and he was only beaten 3 lengths. Jericho Rock was up with the pace and raced nearer to the inside, and Coric Rambler came from miles back. Now, I don't think this race you can come from all that far back, and I don't think it was the plan with Coric Rambler to be that far back in the Ultima, but he was last for most of the way because he couldn't go the pace, and I think that's going to be the same again. So Oscar Elite, who has had problems with bleeding and stuff like that. Now, Joe Tizard's had his horses in really good form, and recent seasons, his father had struggled for consistency through the season. And if Oscar Elite is properly healthy again, he must have a good chance, because he was taking on horses like L'Homme Pressé, and he might well have beaten 3 under through 5 off level weights last November at Cheltenham. And he's now getting the best part of a stone off that one for obvious reasons, because 300 through 5 went on in 1-4 on the back. But I think he might be well handicapped. So it's Oscar Elite and Busselton.
Split stakes for Steve there, Oscar Elite and Busselton, when Matt's going for Busselton. Donn, you're going for a favourite of mine that I backed last year in the race, and he fell when seemingly with a winning chance remastered.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. Look, you have to love Busselton. I backed him when he was beaten by Albara in the EMS Copiers race at Punchestown last year. I backed him when he finished second to Gabby's Cross at the Galway Blazers. I didn't back him when he won the Kerry National. So there's a trend here. Yeah, look, you have to give him a massive chance. As Matt says, he races off 149, same mark as his Irish mark. And he's only 5, and the stats tell you 5-year-olds have a poor rank. Well, I don't think they've ever won this race in any guise, under any of its names, but not many 5-year-olds have run it. I think Billy's Light was only 5-year-old last year. There was no 5-year-old the year before, and I think no 5-year-old the year before. And Busselton, he's an unusual 5-year-old. He's a battle-hardened 5-year-old, as Matt was saying. So I wouldn't worry about that stat at all. And the ground will suit him. So yeah, look, you can see him running a big race, and agree with Oscar Elite as well. You have to I just think he might be a better horse on an undulating track than at Newbury. And 300 through 5 as well. I thought he ran a decent race in that hurdle race that Proskima won, in which Oscar Elite finished behind him. But it kind of and he's the novice from last year. He's the highest placed finisher in the Brown Advisory Chase, what was the RSA, to run in this, which, as Matt was saying earlier on, it's unusual. Normally you get all those top novices coming on here, and they're the kind of potential Gold Cup horses carrying big weights and into a Hennessy. But Paul Nicholls putting cheek pieces on him for the first time. I think you would have wanted to have seen just a wee bit more from him in the hurdle race, for all that it should bring him on. Whereas Remastered, he's the opposite. He won his prep race, the handicap hurdle entry, in which he finished 3rd last year. Then he went on, and as you're saying, Daniel, he looked a winner. Now we don't know how he would have fared. It was the 4th last fence, and a couple of runs after that, he didn't find as much as it looked like he might, most notably at Haydock next time in the Tommy Whittle. So we don't know how much he would have found, or if he would have won. But he was off 146 last year. He's off 142 this year, despite the fact that he won the entry hurdle race. He's now rated 139 over hurdles, £6 higher over hurdles than he was this time last year, and he's £4 lower over fences than he was this time last year. So I just think he could be a really well handicapped horse. The track suits him well. He likes to race handily. As Steve was saying, it is a race in which even though it's a 3.25 mile chase, you generally don't want to be too far behind. As we know at Newbury, it's a rhythm track. The fences come at you quite quickly on both straights. There's a cross fence, so it is difficult to get ground. And you just love his style of racing. He likes to go forward. He raced really enthusiastically at entry the last time. He hit the front a long way out, and he won with plenty in hand, I'd say. So look, we don't know how much more he had left to give, but there's a chance that the wind operation that he had during the summer, that's just rejuvenated him, and he's probably a better horse than he was last year, and he's racing off a lower mark, and he might have won last year if he hadn't come down. So I just think he's got lots in his favour.
Some good cases there. Remastered for Donn, Oscar Elite and Bustleton, split stakes for Steve, and Bustleton for Matt. We'll move on to the 325, the rehearsal handicap chase, and we'll take a look at the betting as we have it at matchbook.com. And Laham Press is the 2.5, 6-4 favourite. Currently into overdrive is 5.0. I Ride is 5.5. Happy Go Lucky, one-time favourite for the ultimate 8.0. Dingo Dollar 9.0 and 26.0, and bigger the rest. Steve, we'll move on to you for this one, and it is Happy Go Lucky that you like here.
Yeah, and it's more price based than anything else. L'Homme Pressé's obviously got an outstanding chance, even though L'Homme Pressé's got top weight. But it's easier to carry weight against lesser horses than it is to do it the other way round. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if L'Homme Pressé won, but at the prices, that's too short for me. And I think Happy Go Lucky is really interesting, getting best part of a stone off L'Homme Pressé, given that this horse wasn't far off being one of the better novice chasers a couple of seasons ago. Finished second to Vintage Clouds at the festival when favourite for the Ultimate. That was 2001. And then went on to win at Aintree.
It was 2021, Steve, I hope.
2021. There wasn't even a festival in 2001.
That's foot and mouth, correct. Spot on. Great knowledge.
2021. Yeah. So that was a really good performance, and then went on to Aintree and won. I was really impressed with the way that horse took apart the 3 mile chase that is the race before the Grand National. And then obviously something went wrong, and last season we didn't see Happy Go Lucky, but that doesn't bother me too much, because Happy Go Lucky is a horse that has won fresh and seems best when having a bit of time between races. Kim Bailey didn't run Happy Go Lucky for 3 months before the Ultima, whether that was to protect the handicap mark or whether it's because Happy Go Lucky was quite happy going in fresh, is open to debate. But what isn't is Kim Bailey's record this season. He's in good form, and what the notable thing is, I think he's had 13 winners since the start of September, and 8 of them have been first time out. So he's a guy who's got his horses very well forward and very fit. And when you're bringing back an injured horse, the worst thing you can do is go to the track not being completely fit. So I think Happy Go Lucky at the prices. I think, is he at 8.0, something like that?
Spot on, 8.0.
Good bet, in my opinion. Good price, anyway.
I wasn't too keen on him before, but you've made a good case there on the fresh angle, perhaps. Matt, for those on Matchbook Betting Exchange, maybe an hour or two before the off, they'll get some ridiculous prices on the couple of horses you're about to put up. The Big Bite and Dallas to pick on split stakes, but tell us why they have more of a chance than maybe the odds suggest.
Well, firstly, this race, since it got moved from Chepstow in 2005, there have only been 2 winning favourites, stack of big price winners, headed by the old lunatic York Hill, who won at 67.0 a couple of years ago. And L'Homme Press, it's great to see him running in this of 164. My racing fans hat on, I hope he wins, because the more we get like Grenadine and Frodon and winning the best handicaps, the more they're running them and the more we can get rid of some of the graded conditions races. But the vibes have been that from Venetia, she's bringing him along slowly with the Gold Cup in mind. And the question I've asked is, if he's fit and primed to run in a top handicap of 164 first time out, why is he running for 40 grand at Newcastle, not 140 grand at Newbury? So I'm just a little bit nervous about whether he'll need this run. And looking at some of the others, it's not that strong a race. So, as I said, a couple of rank outsiders to look. I think they're sort of about 34.0 and 51.0 at the moment. I should think he'll get bigger nearer the time. The Big Bite, his yard was out of sorts for most of last season. 9 winners was Henry Oller's lowest seasonal total since he began training. He's already had 6 winners this term, and horses that showed nothing last season are now winning. Boys of Wexford won at 17.0, the Utoxeter, Generous Day 26.0 at Southall this week, having come into the race seemingly completely out of form. And the Big Bite actually ran a couple of fair races on his last 2 starts last season, including a 1-length second of the subsequent Game Spirit winner and champion chase runner-up Fernando Savola, only getting £8 from him at Doncaster. He's a couple of pounds lower here. Now, you've got to take his stamina on trust because he's never run beyond an extended 2.5. But it's fascinating Henry pitches him in here because he's got a good record fresh. And a horse that will stay, Dallas to Pick Donn, Good record in big handicap, 2nd and 5th in the Martin Pipe. One of those was only 20 months ago when he was a unconsidered 67.0 shot, only 14 lengths behind Gallop and Deschamps in a strong renewal. He was probably primed for it, given he was going to the sales, but he beat Ronald Pump, who's rated 154 off levels at Cork in August. He's been a bit in and out for his 3 runs since joining Diane Sayer, but his best run was his sole try over fences. That was only his 2nd run over fences the last 2 years. He just got mown down close home, jumped really well. And it's possible the pace of chases and the less stiff British fences will suit him ideally. He's £2 higher in a much better race here, but he always seemed well suited to running in good races rather than giving lumps of weight away in lower class contests, which is often easier to do. So I wouldn't be steaming into long press first time out, given the vibes. And hopefully one of my 2 rags can outrun their odds and make the frame at least.
Yeah, Don, what about that point? Like, I like long press here as well, but I guess he might be undercooked first time out, but I see no reason why he can't just beat this field despite giving weight away.
Yeah, look, it's a fair point that Matt makes, and that may be the case. I'm sure it's a case of, no matter how forward he is, it's a case of easing him into the race. And if you gave him a hard race in a Carl Cup, just might, I'm sure Venetia wants to just bring him forward step by step as the season goes on. And maybe the thinking was that this would be an easier race to win than a Carl Cup, because he does go well fresh, and like his progress through the season last season was fantastic all the way to the Brown Advisory Chase at the Cheltenham Festival. So, yeah, I think he's a good horse. He was going to run at Ascot last week, so he said if he wasn't fully primed for Ascot last week, and the market seemed to think he wasn't, then another week that can't be a hindrance anyway. And Venetia Williams, like Fontaine Collonges, when she won at Haydock, that was her first winner of the season since last April. But she's had 3 winners since. She had a double at Ludlow there on Monday. She had a winner at Exeter, and that often happens with Venetia Williams. Once the yard starts, doesn't stop for a while. So I think it's obviously a positive that the yard has had plenty of winners the last week. And yeah, I just think Long Press, he's a I think it's Long Press, isn't it? I think Steve is Long Press, not Long Press. He's just a horse who I think he's generally rated. Like, it may not have been the best group of staying novice chasers last year that we had, but he was up there with the best of them, obviously. And yeah, like, he has to give plenty of weight away, but he's a classy horse. He's a short price, and it's probably a no bet race for me in the end. But I think he's by far the most likely winner. I think he deserves to be clear favourite.
Steve, Lahan Press, what is it?
If I say Presse, it's probably Press. I've got the most awful pronunciation. I tried to learn French when I was employed, and I got a 12 CD set, and because I was doing so many miles in the car, and I got up to about CD 5, and I was going really well. I went to France, was talking to people we were staying with who said they understood me, and I thought, oh wow, this is great. And then I got the sack, and I can't speak a word of it. So it's about the only thing I was disappointed with getting booted out, to be honest.
Right, the picture in the 7 French CDs gathering dust in Steve's car still to this day. So it's Lahan Press for Donn at a 2.75. Happy go lucky for Steve at around 8.0. And there's a couple of big plays, as I mentioned, the Big White Dallas to Pictons. The best time to bet them if you're sitting down watching ITV racing maybe 5-10 minutes before the off. Keep an eye on the exchange, because you will be surprised how big some of these horses strips, and you maybe can play small in the win market and maybe big in the place market. So we'll move on to the final race, which is a 340 Newbury. It's a 2-mile handicap chase, and we agree on this one, so we might just fly through this and just say Amarillo Sky is the 2.5 favorite. And listen, spoiler alert, he will be the pick of all 3. Only money 5.5, Bundor and set 8.0. Monsieur Lecoq also in there 9.0, Claire Denane at 9.0 as well. So Steve, very briefly make the case on Amarillo Sky. Maybe the lads will just follow you in then.
Yeah, I just thought he was very solid. I was quite impressed with him at Cheltenham last time. He's got plenty of winning form. He's won round Newbury, and I just thought he was very solid in a race that mightn't take a huge amount of winning. Yeah,
Matt.
That's the key point I think Steve's made. I look at a lot of these and you just want to take them on. And so even though he's quite short, Amarillo Sky sort of comes down as the last horse standing. And as a rough rule of thumb, because 2-mile chasing is so specialist, it can be easier for horses to defy a rise in the division than it is over further. He's only up £4 for his win at Cheltenham. I think he's a solid, if uninspired, choice.
Yeah, Donn?
Yeah, likewise. His form at the track is really good. He probably would have won a novice handicap chase there back in January, and he fell at the second last, and then he went and won impressively next time back at February, and has run the last day on the season debut at Cheltenham. I thought it was good. He was tough. It looked like Fugitive was coming to get him. Great Diamond made good ground in behind. He looked a big danger as well, but he found plenty in front. He stayed on really well. It was first run back. A £4 hike is fine. He goes on the ground, loads the track. It's a good trip for him, and he likes to go forward. So there are plenty of positives about him. Yeah.
Steve?
If I can find the unmute button. Yeah, what we were talking about earlier, I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but when Amarillo Sky fell at Newbury in the race that Donn was talking about, a horse called Go a Lil won that race, and it was worth £6,000 to the winner. Now, Go a Lil has gone over to France, won a listed hurdle worth 30 grand the other day, and that sums up British racing at the moment, unfortunately. And Dan's frozen.
I'm back. I didn't actually catch any of that, Steve, but I presume it was all riveting. So, so my laptop's just said absolutely no. Take a break here. So we'll move on to any other bet section. Friday to Sunday. So this is where you can pick anywhere you want. So Matt, you've an interesting angle on a Saturday race. It's the 12:45. It's Time Hill, but you're potentially looking at a bigger price on Saturday. I thought he was very impressive on his debut.
Yeah, and this is as much about the theory, actually, because the market is probably more how I think it ought to be than I think it will be at the moment. It may seem logical that the 3 mile novice chase, this is a Broadway trial, the 2.5 mile Berkshire on Friday being a Turner's trial. In practice, it often doesn't work out like that. Trainers usually like to run their Broadway horses over shorter at this time of year to teach them to jump at speed and avoid early slogs. And the stat is that all 11 winners of this race to run in the Broadway this century have been beaten. 7 of them went off 8.0 or shorter. By contrast, 3 of the 6 winners of the Berkshire have won. So as that logic suggests, this is actually more of a trial for the not quite 4 miler. It's produced a couple of winners and small profits. So when looking at the anti-post novice chase markets at this stage, always important to keep in mind how many horses step up in trip come March. Only 4 in this, 3 classy hurdlers. I was a bit underwhelmed by Gelino Bellows' chasing debut at Wetherby. Jumped right, had to work pretty hard to beat a sole rival rated 121. Yeah, it was a match when they scored ground for most of the way. Paul said he'd need the run. But even so, he looked a bit one pace. Sefton form isn't working out that well. And Time Hill and McFabulous coming late to chasing, rising 9. But this is the time of year to back those sort of horses. 4 of the last 15 winners that's been aged 8. At this time of year, they're being battle-harmed. Time Hill's case from top staying hurdles counts for a lot when taking on last season's novice hurdlers, usually haven't had that much racing, and in Gelino Bellows' case, no real worthwhile chasing experience. So if he has to put his head down and battle, I think Time Hill will relish that battle more than McFabulous. By the spring, last season's leading novice hurdlers tend to have improved past these old boys. Gelino Bello, I suspect, will be a lot shorter come Saturday. And if he is, and I wouldn't be even surprised if he goes off favourite, I might be backing Time Hill here. But whoever wins, be cautious about backing them for the anti-post for the Broadway.
Okay, so maybe a good time to get Time Hill. And as I mentioned, I was very impressed with his chasing debut. Steve, 3:40 Newbury Friday. Ask a Honeybee, win and place bet for you.
Yes, win and place on Ask a Honeybee, who was chasing last season and didn't really go to plan. He lost his way. He did win over fences, but he was 1-9, and so he was in small fields. So he didn't really enjoy it, I don't think. But he ran really well back over hurdles last time at Aintree, when I think he just might have needed the run and probably came from a little bit too far back as the race panned out. But it was a nice return to hurdles, and he's got himself handicapped over fences. So I think he's nicely handicapped over hurdles. He is a bit of a funny old boy, but once he's on a going day, he's more than competitive in a race like this. So with Liam Harrison, who's a really good young jockey, taking off £3.
Yeah, and we've got one for each day here in terms of the any other bets. Sunday, Donn, a horse I've actually backed earlier this week for the Troy Town, and you put it in the best lay section. So I was briefly contemplating my choice on that one, going, jeepers, that's a serious lay. But you put it in any other bets. Frontal Assault, one time again, favourite for the Kimure. You like him here?
Yeah, I'd back him to Kimure as well. Yeah, look, it's mad. The similarities between him and last year's winner, Run Wild Fred, they're uncanny. Like, they were both second in the Irish Grand National. They were both maidens at the season. And Wild Fred was a maiden going into Detroit. He'd never won over fences, even though he'd finished second in an Irish Grand National. Frontal Assault, likewise, he'd never won over fences when he ran in the Irish Grand National. But he won last time at Galway. And he won a beginner's chase that has been a really, really good pointer to the future. It's been one of some really, really good horses in the past. And he stayed on really well to beat Darren's Hope. And look, at the time, it looked like there were a few horses, a few of his main rivals, like John Stone, Bacardi's, they were a wee bit weak in the market. But he was weak himself. And even talking to Gordon Elliott afterwards, he seemed to think that he would come on quite a bit for that run. So, and then Darren's Hope, of course, even though she was down the market a little bit in the Galway race, she came out and won the Florida Pearl chase there at the weekend. Bob Murphy's horse, which was phenomenal story, a Grade 2 winner for a man, basically a dairy farmer, has like 2 or 3 horses. But Frontal Assault, he's got the mark now, and that was a beginner's chase, obviously, but he's got the same mark as he had going into that race, 142. It's a good mark for the Troy Town. Gordon Elliott has won 5 of the last 8 renewals, I think, of the Troy Town, something like that. And he did earmark the Troy Town as his race after the Galway race. So, yeah, an awful lot to like about him. I mean, he wouldn't want the ground to dry out too much, but, you know, Navan doesn't tend to get too dry, so ground even close to soft should be fine from, like, yielding to soft or soft. That should be ideal for him. And, yeah, you can just see him getting into a rhythm the same way as Run Wild Fred did last year and taking a lot of catching. Yeah,
Frontal Assault in the Troy Town. That's on Sunday in Navan. We're going to go to the best lay section, and we've 2 here. So Matt, take it away on Manila Cocooner. If you feel he's priced up at 2.75 or shorter on the day, you're going to lay.
Yeah, that's the price has been put in the tissue in the post. It's a hot beginners. And this isn't because I don't like Manila Cocooner as a horse. I do. He's a lovely prospect, but Journey with Me, What Do We Want, Classic Getaway and Co. This is a really deep race. And Manila Cocooner got turned over by an ordinary horse at long odds on his seasonal debut last season. So whether he's one of those horses that needs a run to really get going, I don't know. But it's a cracking race to watch. And if he is that short, then he will be a lay because it's such a strong race.
Yeah, big fan of the horse. It'll be very interesting where he goes on Cheltenham with the nice guy out of the Brown Advisory this year. Steve, you have a lay as well. 12:45 Newbury.
Yeah, first of all, I hope Matt's right with Manila Cocooner. I hope he's staying on into second or third, and Willie Mullins then decides that he's going to actually go up and trip, because even though he's saying that the 2.5 mile novice chase at Cheltenham is the one, I've backed him for the national chase over 3 miles 6.
Well, so, Steve, I've backed him for the Turners. I think I backed him back in last March for the Turners, and everyone started talking about the national hunt chase. So the Turners vibe is beginning to happen a bit, which I'm glad to hear, because it's the right call.
Yeah, that's a bit like me. I've backed Banbridge for the Broadway, and it looks like he's going to be in the Arkle.
Yeah, you won't be going Broadway here, Matt.
I was hoping for that staying on in third place at Cheltenham last week for Banbridge, but alas, he goes and wins over 2 miles.
Well, before you come in, Steve, I was beside the last fence when Banbridge jumped the last. I go, he won't be Broadway. That's Arkle minimum. Maybe Turner, Steve.
Yeah, I'm resigned to that.
Great so.
So the horse that I want to lay on Saturday, I must say the prices weren't out when I was looking at it, and the very unreliable betting forecast that I happened to spot had this horse in at 5-4, and I thought, oh, that is way too short. And that's Lucia, who is now 3.0, not 2.25. But I think there's scope for this horse to still be taken on, definitely, because she obviously very good winning 2 bumpers. She won that Sandown bumper on Imperial Cup Day, and she won it very impressively on soft ground. Now, I don't think that she desperately wants soft ground, but it certainly accentuated the winning distances. And it wasn't the strongest of races. And now she's going into quite a hot race, a listed race for her hurdles debut, taking on experienced horses. And she's favourite to be experienced horses and good ones like Poetic Music of Fergal O'Brien's, who was 6th in the champion bumper at Cheltenham, which would be far, far stronger form. And she's already won at Ludlow, so over hurdles. So I wanted to be against Lucia because I think she'll be hyped out of all proportion. And I think she'll go off a lot shorter than 3.0.
Okay, so Lucia is a lay there, and Matt has a lay on Manila Kakuna. Very quickly before we get to best bets, we'll tell you a little bit about the sign-up offer we currently have at matchbook.com. I've touched on betting on horse racing, in particular on the exchange. The 5-10 minutes before the off, you'd see those big prices get bigger and bigger and bigger. So if you want to take advantage of that and you haven't got a matchbook.com account, as I said, our UK and Irish racing is a great place to bet on. £30 welcome offer. It's money back as a free bet if your first bet loses. That's a £30 welcome offer. Money back as a free bet if your first bet loses. All you have to do is enter the bonus code INSIGHTS30, Matchbook Insights, so it's INSIGHTS30 to avail of that offer. We'll move on to best bets. Maybe you want to put a risk-free bet on one of the guys here. I'm going to put up a best bet, if that's okay, guys, to get the record kicking off going. Lahan Press for me, I just think it's in too easy a race for Lahan Press, and even though it's very close to being even money, I do think there's a bit of juice in the current odds against price. So Lahan Press for me. Donn, who is your best bet on the card?
Yeah, remastered in the Carl Gold Cup. I just think he comes into the race in better form than he was last year. He's lower. He's £4 lower over fences than he was last year, despite the fact that he's £6 higher over hurdles, having won the race at Aintree on his debut this season, the one that he finished third in last year, and he's had a wind operation in the interim, so that might be key to him. I'd be a bit worried if the ground is very quick, but he handled good to soft ground well the last day. So yeah, I think he's a reasonable bet.
Matt, Mr. Coffee for you?
Yeah, I was going to go with Champ when I first looked at this because he was originally chalked up 3.5 in the long distance hurdle, but the market's righting itself now. So it's a very competitive race, Mr. Coffee's in, but then you're getting a decent price. I think Nicky will have him primed for this, needing to get him up in the handicap for the national. Progressive, goes well fresh. He's a decent price to go in for the best bet.
Steve, your best bet?
His current mood in the 155 at Newbury, winning place, who I think has been lined up for this with a nice run at 4/ last time.
Okay, very good. We're done. My thanks to Matt, my thanks to Steve, my thanks to Donn. Hopefully we get full fields. That look, it can't beat the drum season no matter what they tell you. Matchbook Insights is available if you need a recap of the bets or you want to catch up with the bets. And as I mentioned, the likes of Matt's bet and even Steve's bet at current mood, check out the Matchbook Betting Exchange 5 or 10 minutes before the off. You will be surprised at what value you can get. We'll be back next week. Tom will be back next week. Until then, enjoy the weekend's racing and we'll chat to you next week.